You are live.
All righty, I call the Thursday, May 4th Planning Commission meeting to order. Kimberly, can we please have the roll call?
Yes, sir. Mr. Pline,
Present.
Ms. Pico,
Present.
Mr. Waldman,
Present.
Mr. Imes,
Here.
Mr. Svakinudis,
Here.
and Mr. Sale.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we are not expecting Ms. Butler, so we currently have 6 members.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And let me share that real quick. So we have 3 items on the agenda, and before we approve it, the first 2, the public hearing for the Willows and the capital improvement plan are, I would anticipate would take up most of the night. So I would entertain a motion to postpone 1523 till our June 1st meeting to give us time to handle these other 2 items. Somebody want to make that motion?
All the way till June 1st?
Because I think we'll have, we'll finish both of these up. I guess we could move it to the next meeting, and then if we ran out of time, we could move it to June 1st. So
I think the capital improvement plan would take a while. That usually does.
So we are under a time constraint
And
to
the
get that done.
The capital improvement plan, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, putting both those in one meeting is big, but
Yeah, my sense was we were going to need this meeting and the next meeting to finish both the Willows and the capital improvement plan. So that was my suggestion to move it to a motion to move it to the June 1st meeting.
Just to be cautious, perhaps we could just postpone it till the next available date.
Okay, and then we can move it again if we need to.
If necessary.
So anybody want to make a motion to postpone 1523 until the next meeting?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. So those are the 2 items we have. So let's get into the first one, which is PD 2022-001 special mixed plan development for the Willows at Forest Drive. So I assume Mr. Smith will sort of lead us off with the staff presentation to start, and then followed by the applicant's presentation. Is that?
Yeah, we didn't have any minutes at all for March.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I jumped right into that. I'm sorry. Let's back up. So approval of the minutes for March. Has everybody looked at those? And I can show them if anybody wants to see them. So if you remember, here we go. We had on the agenda last time was the public hearing for SDP 2022-003, which was the 161 West that we deliberated and approved, and that's the main content of the minutes. So I entertain a motion to approve these minutes as
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the March 16th minutes are approved. Okay, sorry about that, Tom. So now we're into to the Willows presentation, and then so following the staff and applicant presentation, then we'll open the public hearing. And just before we start, Has anybody signed up for, to speak tonight? Does anybody know?
I did not receive any requests to speak as of noon today, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks. So we have, we have that one submitted piece of written testimony, but okay,
Correct.
thanks. That just helps with keeping an eye on the time tonight. So
Certainly.
if you want to take it over, Mr.
Sure.
Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
up?
members of the commission. For the record, Thomas Smith, Acting Director, Department of Planning and Zoning. Before I begin, I really would like to extend a thank you to Mr. Holden and his team for their patience with the city of Annapolis while we work through some adequate public facility issues and getting them here. I think the commission will remember we had a work session on this project last fall. So here we are several months later for the formal hearing. The commission should have received a packet. I believe I hand delivered those last Thursday that included all the applicants' exhibits. I sent you several emails, which included the staff report dated April 28th. So this is a request tonight for a special mix plan development and a preliminary record plat. And tonight's hearing also serves as the public meeting that's required for a preliminary forest conservation plan. So dual purposes. There's a number of applicants that make up this project. MBID of Delaware, Housing Initiative Partnership, Annapolis Realty Partners, and American Legion Post 141. Properties located at 1701 and 1707 Forest Drive. That's at the intersection of Forest Drive and Newtown Drive. Zoned R2 and R3. The applicant's proposal for at least the vacant portion of the property is made up of a number of parcels. It's 58 affordable housing units are proposed. Those units must comply with the affordable housing standards. That is, those persons' income receiving less than 50% of the mean by the state of Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. There's also a area for incubator space, which will serve as a flex space and lab space and training facilities. Numerous community amenities that go with the property. One of the main, I would say, that's been a long time in coming, probably close to 25 years. The city and the county have been talking about the Relief Road, parallel road to Forest Drive. So the extension of Skipper's Lane through the southeastern portion of this property will be completed with this. I'm sure the commission is very familiar after much discussion during the review and approval of the Village of Providence Point. There's also, with the American Legion parcel, a wonderful opportunity for proposing a veterans garden that they're calling Garden for the Heroes. So I'm going to leave that as my introduction and allow the applicant to provide the presentation. And then I will come back and present you with the department's recommendations, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate because it's in the staff report to discuss this before the applicant's presentation, but maybe just discussing the part of the staff report that deals with the forest conservation, because I know I had just a couple of questions I wanted to ask, and I
Sure.
asked that because I think it may help to hear that hear a couple of things from staff before the applicant's presentation.
Certainly.
Because I think they flow better that way.
Certainly. So as required in the code, the department shall also hold a public meeting on the preliminary forest conservation plan. So this tonight's public hearing serves as dual purpose for that meeting as well. And the forest conservation review is really a two-part review. The first part of that is a forest stand delineation, which the department has reviewed and accepted. The second part of that is a preliminary forest conservation plan. I should say it's a forest conservation plan that is reviewed in two parts. A preliminary that's reviewed along with what you're hearing this evening, as far as the plan development. And the second part of that is the final forest conservation plan, which gets reviewed with the grading permit. Staff reviewed the forest conservation plan that was submitted with the application, found that it is certainly, as we had discussed, the majority of the site is really vacant. There is an area adjacent to Newtown Drive. I think they call that parcel B, that the department is requesting that area be put in forest conservation easement. We'll work with the applicant for the Heroes Garden within that space. We see no reason why that can't be a wonderful opportunity for a veterans garden within that space as well. As you know, forest conservation easements can be written to with flexibility in them. The applicant is proposing, I actually don't remember the number of street trees off the top of my head, but it's quite a few. That is really the afforestation that makes up the forest conservation requirements for planting. It's all done on site. There is no fee in lieu in this case. There is an area of non-tidal wetland along the southeastern boundary of the property that really makes that, I believe it's what's called Forest Stand B, a priority forest. We did agree with the applicant that it is a priority forest and would require a variance for disturbance. We would agree with the variance because that is the location for the Skipper's Lane extended across the property, which begins at Newtown Drive adjacent and all the way through to Spa Road. So that location has been set for quite some time. So we concur that a variance would be supported there. There were two significant trees that were noted by the applicant. I think since the time of the delineation, there's one large oak tree in the center. I believe that may be oak tree number 4. It is in heavy decline. Both the city arborist and I considered it a poor tree, which does not require a variance. It's really, poor trees can become hazardous and threatening. And then there's a second tree, 3, that is, I believe, a 27-inch white oak that is in fair condition. But because it is leaning, it has cavities, it has some crown dieback, it has no significant contributing features to the site. So it is my opinion, it doesn't qualify as a significant tree, thus not requiring a variance either. Is that what you were looking for, Mr. Chairman?
Very much so. So
Good.
you find that the department's discretion to decide on on whether those variances are needed, and that let the record show that you have said that they do not need a variance to remove trees SD3 and SD4, but that the variance to disturb the priority forest stand B is needed. Is that your position?
Yes, sir. I've been a registered landscape architect for 35 years and dealing with the State Forest Conservation Act since it was enacted in 1992. So that is
great.
my professional opinion with that experience.
Yep, and the department makes that determination.
Yes, sir.
And just one follow-up question for me, and I'll see if any of the commissioners have them here. But the variance for stand B really is driven by really requirements that the city's put on this development for the continuation of Skipper's Lane and ingress egress into this particular development, and that's really the only way. Is it the city's assertion that that's really the only way that ingress egress can happen in this development?
Well, it certainly isn't the only way, but it's by far the safest way. We certainly would not want to encourage ingress and egress from Forest Drive.
Especially at that Spa Road intersection.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any of the other commissioners have questions on this part of the forest conservation plan? Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to get that out there, to get that on the record and in front of everybody before the applicant starts to present their their part of the presentation, and because I'm sure that this area will come up, and I'm sure we'll have some other questioning when we get there. So thanks, Mr. Smith. So do we want to go on to the applicant? Who's going to give the presentation?
This is Dirk Schwenk. I'm the attorney for the developers MBID of Delaware. I'll be sort of organizing the presentation. We've got a number of witnesses, some who are here at the Legion with us today, some of which are remote. That's Terry Schuman, primarily the engineer. So just as an overview, you already heard it from Tom Smith, but this is a 58-unit affordable housing program. It's got some really positive elements for development for the city. So some workforce housing. It's on a site that is appropriate for development in the sense that it's not forested at the moment. It doesn't require significant deforestation. There's not significant wetlands issues or runoff issues. And this is really the kind of project that Annapolis needs. So hopefully we can show for you and for the public at large that's listening why this is a good project for approval. We have just our list of witnesses. I'd like to thank Tom Smith too for coming forward with the staff report. As you heard, the staff report finds that this project has met all of the criteria under which the review takes place. So we're just going to show why it's a great project, not just a project that can be approved. So we'll be calling a number of witnesses. I've got David Holden from Ingerman, who's part of the development team here today. I've got Marion Dillon, who is the executive director of the Housing Initiative Partnership. I've got right next to me Gunny Curtis from the American Legion. And then we'll be putting on Terry Schuman from Bay Engineering and Judy Miller, the architect. And hopefully you will appreciate this project as much as I do. So first, if I could, David Holden.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be before you this evening on our applications collaboration between Ingerman HIP and the Legion. Elizabeth Kim, my colleague, is with me here tonight as well from Ingerman. You've heard about the project enough times, so I won't go over that, but just one component of it is we've assembled a package of state and federal funding that has deadlines that we have to adhere to. So that's why we've been probably pests of ourselves trying to get through this process. We appreciate your working with us, and Tom Smith acknowledging kind of how we've worked together the last year to get to this stage. Mary Ann, who's with me here, can introduce HIP and tell a little bit about that, and then Gunny Curtis can talk about the Legion.
You want to go ahead? Okay, again, thank you for having us. I'm Mary Ann Dillon. I'm Executive Director at Housing Initiative Partnership, known as HIP. We're a green nonprofit housing developer and counseling agency. We're based in Prince George's County. We're partners on another affordable project, Town Courts in Annapolis, which opened up 2 years ago with a different development partner. We have a long experience working with Ingerman. We have partnered with them on 4 projects that have been in operation for quite some time, and we're partners on 2 more projects, including this one, that we're hoping go forward in the next year. Our role in all of these projects is to provide the resident services at the back end. We're a very service-driven organization. At this property here, we will be providing a part-time resident services coordinator who will work, probably 15 to 20 hours a week. Work with the residents to create programs for them and activities for them in order to create a sense of community. But even more important than that, we will work with them to link them up to services to make sure that they've got what they need to keep their families stable and to keep their housing. We have a great track record at HIP of working with both homeowners and with tenants to make sure that they can keep their housing. So we have a full spectrum of services at HIP, everything from serving the homeless and bringing them to permanent housing, all the way up to homeownership and helping senior citizens who are homeowners keep their housing and upgrade their housing. So we're really excited about this project and ready to move forward. As I said, we already have a presence in Annapolis with Town Courts, which is a great project. And we have a resident services coordinator who works there as well. That's it for me.
Curtis?
All right, I'm Curtis Jones. I'm the commander of American Legion Post 141. And I came up with an idea about 5 years ago to develop a veterans garden. It's actually a veterans / community garden. And I've also talked to the mental health department of the county, and they're willing to back this garden. They just want to know when we get started, and I'll let them know all that when we can get started. And the garden is a two-phase, a serenity garden for veterans to sit out there or local people to sit there and just take life in and decompress. The other part of the garden is to be able to plant vegetables and above the ground structures, not digging into the earth, but having raised beds. And I've been investigating that for the last 5 years also. And I think it's a worthwhile thing for the community. And also these vegetables that if they're not used by the community can be given to the local schools. And so I'm looking forward to it to go forward. And that's what I have right now.
And commissioners, you have in your packet some further description on the Heroes Garden and the sort of details on that. With that, unless there's any questions, just sort of on the brief stuff, I think we can move on to Mr. Schuman and give a real sort of detailed overview of what the project actually looks like.
Good evening. My name is Terry Schuman, principal with Bay Engineering Incorporated. And I'm going to take you through the site planning and some slides. And I presume at the end, maybe I'll address the FSD and the Forest Conservation Plan just to for the record. So I'd like to just begin. I got a slide up here, just an existing aerial. And I kind of identified all the parcels because there are a lot of parcels involved in this project. So the project is located on the south side of Forest Drive, between Newtown Drive and on the west, and lands to the east where the Village of Providence Point project is currently pending or moving forward. The properties involved in the special mixed plan development are described as 1701 and 1707 Forest Drive, Annapolis, and are more particularly known as tax map 51E, parcels 1769, 1813, which is the long one here. And then there's two reserve parcels or two parcels B and C, parcel 2355, and it's described as parcel C. And then all the way at the other end along Newtown Drive is parcel B. And then you have parcel 1756, which is the Legion property. And that's owned by the American Legion. All the parcels have been consolidated in the small special mixed plan development proposal to promote a mix of land uses with an integrated design and a coordinated plan in accordance with the planned development. The Willows of Forest Drive will be sited on parcels 1769, 1813, and 2355 parcel C. So that'll be the Willows project. And then the Legion will continue as its existing property. And then reserve parcel, or that parcel B, wooded acreage lot is going to be added to the parcel 1756 at the end of this project. And then we're going to propose connectivity, landscaping, buffering for the Legion property as part of this project. And as I indicated before, parcel B is 0.73 acres. It's to be transferred to the American Legion, which has future plans to restore the currently unmaintained area via Garden of Heroes, which enriches the healing experience of wounded veterans, their families, and caregivers through therapeutic gardens and enhanced green space. And Gunny just indicated that before. The entire property outlined in black here, the heavy black line, is comprised of 5.6 acres. It's split zoned R2, single family residence district, and then R3, general residence district. I'm going to move on to, let me just go to this plan. So this is an existing site plan, but I just wanted to show, so this parcel, which contains this heavy rectangular line, this is the R2 zone, and everything, all the other parcels are zoned R3. So it's split zoned R2 and R3. Special mixed plan developments are allowed as a permitted use subject to standards in each of the applicable zoning districts pursuant to Annapolis City Code 21.48.010. Also, just wanted to point out this site is not located within the Chesapeake Bay critical area. And I thought this is a good slide just to show you. So this is the forest stand. Tom talked about it a little bit, but heavy areas, that's the stand A. That's a forest. This is the forested area, stand A, 1.08 acres. And then stand B was the other stand that Tom was talking about. That's the other forested area. Everything else on the site is not considered forest. These circles, the circles with no shading are all significant trees. Those are trees that were identified 24 inches and less than 30 inches. And then the heavy shaded circles, those are the specimen trees. We consider those specimen trees, which are greater than 30 inches. And just for point of context, what Tom was indicating before, this was ST4, and we'll see it as we move through. And this is ST3. So these were the two trees that we were asking for a variance for removal. And then stand B was the portion that we were asking for removal on the forest. And again, I'll go through this again when we go through the forest stand and forest conservation plan. Moving on to the site plan, I think what I want to do is go back through the evolution. Now I'm going to go. So when we started this process, we had a community input meeting. And then we've had 2 work sessions. So our first community input meeting, this was the plan that was presented to the community. Still was 58 units, but you can see the parking configuration. We met the full complement of parking on site. We had playground areas, and then we had the 3 buildings and surface parking. Always had the skipper's lane down on the south end. But as from our first work session, there was some discussion, and kind of went back to the drawing board after that first work session, and we presented this plan. We modified the plan, and this is essentially the plan that we're showing you tonight as well. We moved the buildings around. We created a T. Moved the. You can see if I go back and forth between the two, you can kind of see the difference of how it evolves. So we took the smaller building, which we'll consider this as building A. This is building B and building C. So again, the same buildings, but we moved building A to the end, the T, pulled it off a route, off of Forest Drive. And we did that for a purpose. I mean, this building contains the incubator building as well as some residences. And we added some community space. We added a patio, some garden plots, adjacent to this building, and kind of worked on that. This was the anchor of the site. So when you came off of Skipper Drive, Skipper Lane, you can, this was the anchor of the T. You could look out and see the community, essentially the community building. The other 2 buildings are essentially the same. We still kept the residential or the playground area, and then we reduced the parking. If you remember before, we had parking up in here. We reduced the parking and work with the Allegiant on a consolidated parking plan between the 2 sites. So for overflow parking. Again, Skipper's Lane continues as it is. We did coordinate with DPW and the Providence engineers on the geometry of that. So we're consistent in geometry, profile, vertical, and the dimensions of the road. This is going to be a 2-lane. The two 10-foot wide lanes in each direction, two 10-foot lanes, 5-foot bike lanes on both sides of the road, and then 6-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road. So again, this is all in coordination with DPW and Providence Point. So the Skipper's Lane or the Legion, we did provide a connection point for the Legion off of Skipper's Lane. And we also made an interconnection between the sites. So that's a little different from before. We didn't have an interconnection. Now we do. It was one of the suggestions from the work session meetings. So we feel that was a good suggestion. We also connectivity of the sidewalks. We've connected sidewalks out to Forest Drive in and around the site, and also connected them down to Skipper's Lane, which again runs along Skipper's Lane and then out to the Village Green to the west, and other sidewalks up and down the road. So we feel we have good connectivity between the sites, and as this site develops, we'll also have connectivity to the sidewalks that will extend out to Spa Road.
And if I could interrupt you just 1 second on the connectivity for that
Sure.
connection between the 2 parking lots. Did I read that will be removable bollards? Did I read that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay, it's just, so it's only for emergency purposes for vehicles.
Right. And also it'll address the connectivity with pedestrians as well. with the-
Yeah, but you won't be able to drive through there unless the police come and move the bollards or something like that.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Thanks.
And as indicated before, the patios, the gardens and the playground area all provide the recreation area for the facility. Water and sewer, we will be served by public city water and sewer. Everything will come off Newtown Drive. There's sewer and water. We'll bring it up Skipper's Lane and then up and into the site to serve all these buildings. And as far as stormwater management goes, everything ultimately drains to the Spa Creek, the headwaters of Spa Creek and the Severn River. We are proposing 5 bioretention facilities. One here, they're all in blue, and I guess for some reason this wasn't blue, but there's one behind building C. And we also have a storm filter system in the parking lot that will provide the required environmentally sensitive design volumes and as far as the quantity goes. So we will meet the 125% requirement for water quality requirements, the ESD requirements for stormwater. That's required by the city, and we'll meet all the county and state, the city and the state requirements. So we comply with all the stormwater management that was reflected in the AFDF report as well. As far as APF goes for the project, all of the fire, public maintenance facility, water and sewer facilities, recreation facilities, traffic impact analysis, non-auto transportation facilities, school facilities, and the stormwater facilities have all been approved with no mitigation from all the agencies. However, as you all aware, police protection had an issue with the response times and the officer ratios. So there was a mitigation plan that has been approved. And I'll just read some of the conditions that are required of that. So the police have determined that the Willow contributions to capital improvements are sufficiently proportionate to the minimal impact of the development has on the officer ratio and response times. The development enhances the police protection by providing the following: high definition internal cameras that shall be installed at the Willows and the external security cameras on both the Willows and the American Legion properties that will be available to the police department. Lighting throughout the property, particularly along pedestrian and parking areas, shall be adequate to maintain safe levels and is an important improvement to the current dark overgrown lot that exists today. The site shall be designed to crime prevention through environmental design, CPDED principles in order to maintain site safety. In addition, landscaping is currently overgrown and shall be maintained so as not to create vulnerable spaces. The property shall be fully staffed during normal business hours, as well as having 24-hour on-call staffing. And the extension of Skipper's Lane provides emergency response vehicles with improved traffic patterns to a significant population of residents in the event of an emergency traffic flow issue. So all of those 5 conditions were all agreed upon, and that APF's certification was executed by the owners. So I wanted to touch on the standards and compliance with the city and state plans. So as far as an Annapolis comprehensive consistency with the Annapolis comprehensive plan, this project demonstrates that the new development will be consistent with the 2009 comprehensive plan's goal of maintaining community character while providing the much needed affordable housing. It provides compliance with the state of Maryland smart growth policies. As a priority funding area, Annapolis is a prime opportunity to apply the anti-sprawl, community revitalization, utilization of existing infrastructure, and infill development policies of the Smart Growth Initiative. This proposal embraces numerous smart growth criteria, including environmental protection, common open space, strong sense of community, integration of on-site environmental features, and proximity to existing development and infrastructure. It also provides compact development form, linkages to development communities and accessibility and mobility choices. We feel with all those, this project is consistent with the Annapolis Comprehensive Plan. As far as conformance with the zoning district and code requirements, This proposal for the Willows and the American Legion proposal comports with the requirements for Title 20 and 21 of the city code. Title 20 deals with subdivisions, and I'll just go down to the subdivision, and Tom kind of touched on this too. The application for the redevelopment of the Willows at Forest Drive includes a preliminary record plat. So that's part of what we're here for tonight. The planning staff and various city agencies have reviewed the plats and have found them to be in compliance. Planning and zoning did note that they did want to remove this forest conservation tabulation, which we will do. Since we do have a forest conservation plan, there was no need to put that on the plat. And then on the second page, and this is going back to that parcel B wooded lot, we're going to show a forest easement on that lot for this forested area was part of the original Riders Glen subdivision, and that never created the easement. So we will create the easement with this plat. And again, you know, this is a preliminary plan, a preliminary plat for tonight, and then we'll go back and make the changes, submit them back through planning and zoning, and then it'll come to you as a final plan ultimately for approval. As far as Title 21 goes, planning and zoning, the use, bulk, open space, the density standards have all been met for this project. The Planning Commission can adjust the applicable bulk standards, including a 20% height increase for low-income housing pursuant to Section 42 of the Federal Internal Revenue Tax Code, and that meets the criteria of the Federal Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. This project does. So the Willows of Forest Drive complies with these federal codes and programs, and thus we are requesting a 20% height increase from 35 feet to 42 feet. And we believe these heights are compatible with the 42-foot tall residential structures located on adjacent properties around this property. As far as, I'm going to go back up to the, as far as parking goes, as indicated before, when we came back in from the work session, we did reduce the parking down. So we did submit an alternative parking request. You know, multifamily dwellings require a parking ratio of 1.5 parking spaces per unit for a total of 87 spaces to serve 58 dwelling units. And again, we've provided an alternative parking needs study supporting that request for a reduced parking area. As noted in our report for the alternative parking study, affordable housing historically has not required full compliance with parking code requirements. The applicant has constructed numerous and managed numerous affordable housing projects throughout the state of Maryland. Based upon their experience and a parking needs study of their facilities, a parking ratio of 1.1 parking spaces per unit is being proposed for a total unit parking of 61 spaces. So we provide, at a 1.1 parking rate for the 58 units, we provide 61 spaces on site. We also have that business incubator in the building, which requires 6 parking spaces, and that's being met as well on site. So we have a total of 67 parking spaces on site. For the Legion property, they require 47 spaces by city code, and they're providing 67. So again, the parking arrangement between the two will allow for the overflow parking if it's as needed. And Dirk, there's a bunch of standards for the plan development regulations. Do you want me to run through those?
If you could touch on those, Mr. Schuman, and also can you just mention whether the notice and posting requirements been met?
Oh, yes. With the posting was properly posted. There was one instance where the sign went down and we immediately got a new sign and put it back up. So I'd say it was only down for maybe a morning. That was it. But the signs have all been posted. They continue to be posted as of today. So as far as the standards go for the plan development regulations, I'll read the standard and then I'll show you how we're going to comply. The plan, one of the standards, the plan development is compatible with the character of the surrounding neighborhood and the comprehensive plan and the purpose of plan developments. The Willows at Forest Drive, the special mixed plan development proposes affordable multifamily units compatible in scale with the surrounding neighborhood. characterized of multifamily and single-family attached residence, live-work units, and neighborhoods serving commercial uses. As I indicated before, the principles contained within the Annapolis Comprehensive Plan support this special mixed plan development. We believe this standard is being met. Another standard, the proposed location of buildings, structures, open space, landscape elements, and pedestrian and vehicular circulation systems are adequate, safe, and efficient, and designed to minimize any adverse impact upon the surrounding area. This site design was developed through careful consideration of the locations of buildings, structures, open space areas, stormwater management, and landscaping. The proposed skipper lane provides safe ingress and egress, pedestrian and bicycle compatible design, and serves as a parallel road to Forest Drive, connecting neighborhoods to commercial uses and schools. The project is also the bus routes are short walking distance to commercial uses along Skipper's Lane and Forest Drive. So when you look on the city bus lines, the brown, orange, and purple lines, which all go out down Newtown Drive and all in Village Greens, they provide access, transit access to downtown and other areas of the city and county. And again, we feel that standard has been met. The plan development will promote, another standard is the plan development will promote high quality design and will not result in greater adverse impacts to the surrounding area compared to the development that may otherwise be permitted pursuant to the zoning code if a plan development were not approved. This project proposes quality, affordable housing at a scale compatible with and complementary to the surrounding neighborhoods. We feel the special mixed plan development process and our site design has resulted in a higher quality design rather than a cookie cutter suburban style type site design with less sensitivity towards environmental site resources and minimal common open space that would have occurred without a plan development. Another standard is the plan development complies with the plan development use standards and bulk and density standards. As far as the use standards go, the multifamily dwellings are permitted as a special exception use in the R3 district outside of the plan development or as a permitted use within a plan development, which is what's before us here tonight for this project. So again, we feel we comply with the use standards of that code, of that section. As far as bulk and density standards, as I indicated before, they're all being met. And we've requested the bump up on the building height from 35 feet to 42 feet. Another standard is the plan development complies with the site design plan review criteria provided in section 2122-080. And I did provide everybody a binder. Hopefully you all got it. We did address, we addressed the special mixed plan design complies with all the applicable site design plan review criteria, and all the written statements have been provided in tab 4 of the binder. And again, we believe we've met that standard. The plan development plan, the last standard was the plan development plan includes adequate provision of public facilities and the proposed infrastructure utilities, and all other proposed facilities are adequate to serve the plan development and adequately interconnect with existing public facilities. Water, sewer, gas, electric communication utilities are all located adjacent to the property. Utility services proposed to be provided from all these existing lines, and all new utilities will be underground, and all utilities and facilities are adequate to serve the special mixed plan development and will adequately interconnect with existing public facilities. And I think that's all justified in the APF that was approved for this project. And I think the last thing, Dirk, I was going to talk about, and I don't know if it's the appropriate time, but I could go through the FSD in the Forest Conservation Plan as part of this testimony.
Let's do that while we're here. And then I think lastly, after we do that, there's a couple of conditions in the staff report we can talk about as well.
Right. So as Tom indicated before, and he probably did a better job than I'll do, but he explained the forest stand delineation, the Forest Conservation Plan. I do have Ken Wallace is available if anyone has any questions specifically. Ken Wallace with Bay Environmental Inc. He was the qualified professional on this, but since I'm talking, I can go through it, and certainly if there's any detailed questions, to the forester, we can answer those. So, as Tom indicated before, we've submitted and gotten accepted the forest stand delineation, and I kind of explained it before. The forest stands are the heavy lines, and the trees were all the located trees. We also then we submitted the preliminary forest conservation plan. And as Tom indicated before, so when with the forest conservation that was in parcel B, and then we were removing the stand B, and as you can see, Skipper's Lane goes right through stand B, that's the justification for the clearing of that priority forest. As Tom indicated, the tree variances. This was ST4 that we were proposing to be removed, and the other tree is down here again in the Skipper Lane extension. That was the other significant tree, ST3, and both Tom indicated both of them are in poor condition as we agree, and no variances are required for those. And from a forest conservation standpoint, when you run through the calculations based on the forest cover and what's being cleared, we have a requirement of 0.94 acres for this property. And with our trees, which we are proposing total of 42 trees, they make up a square footage of 1.0 or an acreage of 1.04. So with these trees, we have trees, street trees along Skipper's Lane, and street trees along Forest Drive. They are allowed to be mitigation for forest conservation requirements as indicated in the state code. And those will make up 1.04 acres where 0.94 is provided. So as Tom indicated before, as 0.94 is required, as Tom indicated before, we'll meet all our forest conservation requirements on site with no off-site requirements. And I think Tom touched on it. There are wetlands. Let me go back to just so for everyone understands. So the wetland area is this kind of large area down here where the Skipper Lane is coming in. There's also a little bit of wetlands up along the adjacent property. And while we're not going to disturb anything over here, we will disturb these wetlands. We have filed with the state and the Corps on these wetlands, and they've all agreed that they can be filled in with the Skipper's Lane extension. And we're just waiting for our final approval of the plans before we can get those permits issued. So with that said, Dirk, I think that explains our forest stand and forest conservation plans.
Okay. There were two conditions in the staff report.
So I'm sorry, can I interrupt for a sec?
Sure.
So just a couple of things on the forest conservation plan. So just with respect specifically to the variance that to disturb that stand B,
yes,
that we mentioned about earlier, can you talk a little bit about what if that weren't approved, what hardship would be incurred?
The hardship would be just it wouldn't. That whole road was aligned with the adjacent property out the Spa Road. So the whole alignment would have to change. It would affect. The road would have to go, I guess, north, Page North, around it and bisect the site. It would impact every property along the way.
And do you think this development is even possible if you were to have to reroute Skipper's Lane?
I don't think it would be.
Okay. Now, with respect specifically to the factors in the variance request that are in the tab 21 of the proposal, most of them deal with what I inferred was the variance to remove ST3 and 4. So there are these 6 factors that have to be addressed in that section of the code for the variance for 171 section of the code, but most of them deal with I think the variance thing that the staff said was not required. Do you want to walk through those 6 factors with respect to disturbing stand B versus those removing those other 2 trees? So we can get a sense for
So I think we had
you
two,
know,
we
how
had two
to how to
letters.
decide on this variance.
Yeah, we had, are you talking to me or Tom? I'm sorry.
No, to you guys.
Okay, there were 2 letters in that tab 21, right? One was the justification for the priority forest, and the other one was the variance for the 2 trees. So there was an October,
Okay.
They're both dated October 4th, but both those letters outlined it. And I guess if I could, Ken Wallace is, could we bring him forward and he's a panelist, but can he speak to your request there, Alex?
Yeah, sure. And you know, if there are any other commissioners that want to chime in on you know, what you've provided us for the, you know, for this variance that staff has determined that's needed, please feel free to do that. I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with the information that we have to decide on this variance.
Sure. Ken, are you available there?
Yes. Yes, hi, I'm Ken Wallace with Bay Environmental. Prepared the tree variance justification, tree variance for the project. And I think, you know, the important thing, one of the important things here to note is, you know, what kind of hardship. One of the first items is what kind of particular hardship would happen. And I guess you guys were talking more about the forced justification, so I apologize. But one of the hardships is the alignment with Providence Point next door. You know, there's a chance they could avoid part of that priority forest, but which would move the road further north, but that would not align with the approvals of the, you know, the existing road coming in from Providence Point. So that would be a major issue as well. I think that's important to note. In terms of the tree variance, you know, the conditions of the property, due to the location of the road alignment, it just makes it, you know, with the master plan road the way it is, it just makes it difficult to avoid the tree, the one significant tree number 3, and the southwest corner of the property, and then also avoiding the priority forest in the southeast corner of the property. So I think that's you know, that's another thing to note. How would this variance, you know, be a special privilege? I don't know if it would be a special privilege, as we mentioned, just because that's the master plan road alignment. I mean, you can't at this point, trying to realign that would impact, you know, these properties and the adjacent properties as well. Conditions relating to building on the property or the land, making it non-conforming. It certainly does not make the property non-conforming. Like I said before, you know, it is master plan road, and it's got to connect in with the Skipper's Lane on the west hand side, and also the Providence Point Road as well. It will not you know, adversely affect water quality, because water quality, you know, water quality regulations and all that are being handled on site. So they're meeting the state required water quality on site for this project. So there shouldn't be, wouldn't be any effect or any adverse effect on water quality to extend this road. This road is necessary to access the site since they cannot access it off Forest Drive. It's just the way the alignment is set. It shouldn't affect water quality, and unfortunately, it's the way they have it set. It's got to connect at either end.
Okay, thanks. So anybody else have questions about this, the forest conservation stuff before we move on?
Yeah, no, I have a question. Somewhere on one of these maps, there's you indicate that there's some significant trees that are right off the property to the east, actually in the village of Providence Point. Yes.
Yes, ST1 and ST2, yes.
Okay.
They're identified up top here in this table.
Okay, I can't read that. So can you tell us how big 1 and 2 are?
So ST1 is a 25-inch white oak. It's in fair condition. And ST2 is a white oak, 25-inch in good condition. Doesn't appear to be any apparent problems.
Okay, a tree with a 25-inch diameter trunk. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct.
What's the Mr.
Wallace.
I'm sorry, Mr. Walls? Yes.
Wallace. Sorry.
Wallace, excuse me, thank you. What's the drip line diameter on a 25-inch diameter tree? How far out does the drip line extend?
That depends on the tree, I guess it is, how large the canopy is. And this is a forest grown tree, so the canopy is going to be, smaller than you'd have in an open grown tree. So the exact drip line, it's hard to say.
The difference between the drip line and the extent to which the roots extend?
Yes, I mean, they aren't typically one and the same, but we do apply critical root zones to trees. Typically it's 1-to-1. If it's a 25-inch tree, you'll have a critical root zone if it's forest grown of 25 feet from center or from trunk, a radius of a circle all the way around the tree.
Okay. Are you able to give us a figure of how close the foundation or limit of disturbance is going to be from, I think it's building B. Sometimes it's called building B and sometimes it's called building 2, but you understand there's a big building that goes, as close up to the buffer line as it can, and it is directly in front of those 2 trees. So if we could get some idea of how close that building comes to that tree.
So the closest one is ST2, right? That's
at the bottom. Yes.
From the center to the building is 50 feet.
Okay, what's the limit of disturbance?
The limit of disturbance, it's, there's a force main right here from the city. So I'd say the limit
Already there? That mean it's already there?
It already exists.
Okay.
Our limit of disturbance is about 20 feet from the building, 20 feet from the building. So that would leave 35 or was it 30 feet from the center to the, our limit of disturbance is approximately right here where the plantings are.
Okay.
We're about 30 feet. 30
Mr.
feet.
Wallace, what if anything should be done to ensure that there's not significant damage to the root structure of both of these trees? What kind of construction techniques would be suggested?
Well, it's important to note too, I'm not sure when that force main went in, but those 2 trees, 25 inches, they have been there for a while. So my guess is when they put that force main in, this is the last 20, 30, 40 years, they severed most of those extending roots that extended towards the property. So that doesn't mean some haven't grown back, but my guess is if they open trench that, then they cut all those roots on the the west side of both of those trees.
Mhm.
So we can look at, what we could potentially do to help, save those trees or lessen the impacts on the root systems. But, I'm not 100% sure exactly how far those root systems really extend out in towards the property.
What are the sorts of techniques that would be done, assuming that the root structure does now have crossed over that main and is now extending into the subject property? What kinds of techniques are possible?
Well, I mean, we have to look at it in cross section. Are they just filling it? They're excavating it. How close are they getting to it? I mean, there are some options,
Mhm.
but we'd have to take a close look at exactly what they're doing around this building to and maybe even determine if the roots are extending through that. And if they are, what we could possibly do. I'm not 100% sure exactly what would be done until we have a little more information on that.
Well, one of the things is that if the limit of disturbance does not reach to that force main that's existing, and there's several conditions having to do with not removing the soil which is stripped from the surface, not removing it from the site, but reusing it on the site. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I believe that's some of the conditions in the staff report, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. So the limit of disturbance is somewhere between the building and the property line?
You can see, that's why I pulled up this plan. This is our grading plan, so
Uh-huh.
you can see the 40 contour. That's pretty much our limit of disturbance right here.
Yeah.
So, and as I said before, I guess if you took a 1-to-1 on the DBH for the tree of 25 inches, we'd be 25 feet away, and our LOD is going to be 30 feet away.
Okay.
So,
Question answered. Thank you.
but I will just point out, this was just an overlay Provident Point, and you can see
They're getting close.
they're very close. Yes.
Mhm.
Can you, Mr. Seaman, can you comment just on how much of the overall property is dedicated to the new Skipper's Lane? That's sort of a carve out of, the sort of usable, developable part of the property.
Of our 3/4 of an acre, 0.75 acres. I think you asked me if how much of the acreage is being dedicated for Skipper's Lane?
Correct.
Yeah, 0.75 acres. Total. That's from Newtown Drive to the limit of the Skipper's Lane.
Well, they're gaining all sorts of advantages though from being on Skipper's Lane and having access on Skipper's Lane.
Yeah, I'm just giving you the square footage, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or the acreage. But I will say, I mean, part of this layout and everything that we've evolved to is, partly because of we've given up 0.75 acres and everything's pushed this way. We're being pushed this way from Forest Drive. So, I mean, the Skipper's Lane and the Forest Drive have all come to the conclusion of why we've come up with this development. It helped to develop the site plan.
Mr. Seaman, with respect to this staff report, there was 2 conditions in there. You mentioned some of the conditions already, but there was 2 conditions in there on which the development team's sense was that we could use some relief to make sure this property could go through. One of them was a request for an additional 20-foot buffer from Forest Drive. Can you just comment on that?
Yeah, so let me go to the site plan. I think the staff report indicated that they would like to increase, well, you'll see it in the conditions. One of the conditions was currently right now, the way we have it proposed is we have a 20-foot, 20.5 feet setback to the property. And then if you take the building to the curb line of Forest Drive, it's approximately 50 feet. And the condition was they would like us to increase the 20-foot to 40-foot, and which would then increase, which would result in a 70-foot buffer from the curb line to the building. And the hesitation on our part to do that is just we've developed this plan with, for amenity space, gathering areas in the front and setbacks off of this interior, more for the community benefit, for some larger, patio areas and gathering areas and garden plots and playground areas. And if we have to shrink it, we'll be just taking away areas to, for the benefit of the community. So we met the buffer, 20-foot landscape buffer, and we were hoping that we could, propose the plan that we showed today.
Can I ask a question about that? So with respect to the building A, and what's different now is that smaller, and that the incubator stuff is there. So what's all on the lower floors of that building? So I'm thinking about the buffer with respect to noise from Forest Drive. I'm assuming that's kind of what staff was getting at, is a larger buffer, essentially going to be less noise.
Do you mind if Judy's going to speak next about the architecture, so she could probably answer that a little better than I can.
But fewer, there's not going to be any residential use on the first floor there? Probably.
I believe there is, but I'm going to let Judy answer that.
Okay.
And just if we had to move it, we would,
What would you lose?
we would lose parking. So we just have a bigger alternative standard on parking. And likely we would lose, the landscape, a little bit of the landscaping and front open area here in front of the building.
So you would lose the parking spaces on either side of the entrance to that building?
If I had to do it, you'd probably lose parking spaces down here and then just pick the whole thing up and move it down.
Uh-huh.
But you'd lose,
How many?
I think we would lose 4 spaces if we had to do the 20-foot,
2 on each side?
2 on each side.
Okay.
And then the issue there is we reduce the playground area. So it's the parking spaces and reduction in the amenity space.
Mr. Schuman, there's also a condition that related to the traffic control out on Forest Drive. Can you just comment on that?
Yeah. The condition, I think it's condition 5. There for the recommendation. The applicant shall coordinate with Anne Arundel County Department of Public Works for lane configuration and signal phasing modifications at Forest Drive, South Cherry Grove Road intersection. These improvements shall be approved and bonded prior to the issuance of grading or building permits. Our understanding of again, our traffic, APF traffic didn't require any mitigation. And it was just a recommendation in the traffic study. But my understanding is that these improvements are being done by the Providence Point. So if anything, I just think the condition should be clarified, maybe. That it's we're of the understanding that these are condition, that these improvements are to be done by Providence Point.
What is the coming to the bottom of that, what you have on the screen, the site? Yeah, what's the buffer between the 2 lower buildings and the sidewalk? What kind of distance are you talking about in there?
Those are 15 feet to the sidewalk.
Uh-huh.
And 14 feet. And we kind of looked at that a long time ago too. We were trying to provide some sort of streetscape there. I think that was something planning and zoning was pushing for as well. So we think the 14 and 15 foot is adequate to provide some landscaping and buffering in this area. So the buildings aren't right up against the sidewalk.
And how wide is a parking space?
8.5 feet. 8.5 feet wide. That's the city standard.
So if you took, if 8.5, you took 8.5 feet from that 15, it would have that, put that in half, right? And bring the building close to the sidewalk, right? Closer.
You talk about taking the whole site and moving it down?
Yeah, well, that's what you
Yeah.
said.
Well, I was saying I would break it here and lose, these spaces and leave. I think it's important to leave these setbacks and the streetscape that we're proposing along here. So I wouldn't take the whole site and move it down. You'd lose parking in here, but you would lose. I guess you're right, Mr. Wallman. You could just reduce this and take the whole site and move it down.
Well, and lose one at the top. I mean,
Yes.
I'm just trying to think it through about what you could do. I mean, you're talking feet, less than 10 feet. So every inch counts, so to
Yeah.
speak, foot counts.
Absolutely.
So if the whole thing were moved 8.5 feet down, then you would only lose 8.5 feet at the top. Right.
Right.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
I'm just trying to think it through there.
And I think, I don't know, adding space back here, just if you go back to the police, the safety and landscaping and things like that, these are just areas of.
Right. I understand. They're not really useful.
Yeah.
But there may be other, once we hear from Mr. Smith, we may hear what his reasons are, and there may be modifications to the plan by way of some fencing or whatever. I'm not quite sure yet what his reasons are, but he'll have a chance to explain those. And you follow me? There may be some compromising available.
Agreed. Definitely agreed.
Okay.
Unless there's further questions from Mr. Schuman, I'll have Judy Miller talk about the architecture here.
No more.
Hello. Remember me from last time, Judy Miller with Architecture by Design. Terry, do you have slides of the architecture?
Yes, I do. Give me one
Thank you.
second. I'll put that up. Is that okay?
Can you put it up on the left so I can see which sheets are going to come up? There we go. Thank you. So this is the cover sheet of the latest submission that we have, where it indicates what the architecture looks like. It has been adjusted based upon some feedback from your group for the previous meetings that we had. As you can see, it's 3 stories. It's not anything that is obtrusive. It's has nice roofs, nice porches, some cottage style windows, gables, and a mix of brick and siding and shingle siding. I'm trying to think if do you have the renderings in this, the other renderings that we did, Terry?
Yes. You talking about like the sketches you did? Or-
No, not the sketches. I think we had some other colored renderings.
Give me a second.
What's that? Yes. We're just while he's looking for that, we're LEED Silver, we're Energy Star, multifamily new construction. The program through the state where the tax credits are obtained require high standards for quality of materials as well as energy efficiency. I'm not sure what else you would like to hit on with the architecture until he finds
What's on the describe building A, the building that's out by Forest Drive. What's on the
Okay.
first floor of building A?
So building A, there we go. Building A is the smallest of the three buildings, which has on the first floor the incubator space and 2 units. When we did some of this rearranging to try to give you a bigger buffer off of Forest Drive, that's when it got moved from the left-hand side up to there, so it impacts less people, I guess, and it gave us more green space. So this building up here that you're showing, I believe, is building A.
It is.
So that's what you would see from inside the site. The backside, we made the balconies interior, so they wouldn't have outside space, so they would be less impacted from noise. It became sunrooms.
And the designs that you have here, are these, you consider them to be compatible with the neighborhood, or maybe even better than some of the places in the
I
neighborhood?
would say it's very compatible with the neighborhood, and of course, I'm an architect, would say it's better.
Are the balconies, the outdoor balconies are usable?
Yes. You can get a table and chairs out there.
What's the mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms inside?
Hang tight.
12 1-bedroom, 28 2-bedroom, and 18 3-bedroom units, and that is throughout the entirety of the property of buildings A, B, and C.
Could you hear Liz okay?
Could you repeat it?
Sure.
Here, give it to me, I'll read it. Okay, here. So there's 12 1-bedrooms, 28 2-bedrooms, and 18 3-bedrooms.
How about for building A? So it's just thinking more about, the setback.
Okay, Terry, can you go back? Yes, thank you for that one. So go to building A, floor plan up there. Okay, so first floor plan, there are 2 3-bedrooms on the first floor, and the rest is all the incubator space.
And
Yes,
your residences face forest and your incubator faces inward?
yes, it does.
Why wouldn't you want to put your residences towards the quieter side?
Well, we like to keep eyes on the street with the offices. That's where, the leasing office is, and they can't kind of keep an eye on the community. And what's interesting about this building, what we did to get a continuous space across the first floor, those 2 first floor units that face the backside of the building have their own private entrances. They have a nice little porch that continues across there that brings them from the parking back there, and it's fully covered. Yes. Terry, you are wonderful. I'm going to have you my Vanna every time.
And can we see the one of the other 2 buildings, not building A, but one of the other 2 buildings layouts?
Go down to, yep, that one. Up, yep. That one. Okay, so this is it's type 3, and this is an old one before we coordinated between the site plan and the architecture, which was A, B, and C, and 1, 2, and 3. So this is also known as building C, and you can see that it's basically 2 pods of gardens that are linked together at the center. There are 4 units per stairwell and 3 stories. So for a total of 2, 4, 3, let me see, that's 12, 24 units. Correct? Yes. In that building. And this is all 1s and 2s.
A question about the ADU units. Are they in a specific building or are they just throughout? Some of them might be in different buildings.
All affordable. Did
I'm
you
sorry,
say
the accessible.
ADA?
I meant the ADA,
Accessible.
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said ADUs and I'm like, I don't know that answer. So if you look at this plan, matter of fact, this one has a UFAS unit right in the front. Yep, right there you go.
Okay, I see it now. Thank you.
So that is your UFAS unit. That's your higher level of accessibility. All of the ground level units meet fair housing, which has a higher level of accessibility than your average housing. So there's workspaces in the kitchens and reinforcing in the bathrooms for grab bars. Doors are wider. So it meets fair housing.
Thank you.
And no, they're not all in one building. Anything else?
I don't think so. Is there any additional comment?
No.
Does the commission have any other questions on the architecture?
Anybody? Not for me.
Well, that concludes our presentation. I believe Mr. Smith had some comments on the conditions.
Mr. Chairman, may I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Certainly. Terry, thanks for leaving the site plan up. So the staff has recommended, beginning on page 16, there are 35 conditions, most of which the commission has seen before. There are a number of standard, or you might want to call boilerplate conditions, but there are a few that are specific to just the Willows project. And since we've been talking about building A quite a bit here, we've actually talked about the location and position of building building A for almost 2 years since the onset of this project. And the location consistency with other buildings on Forest Drive and their setbacks. If you look at the village of Greens of Annapolis, it has 2 commercial structures, 1-story structures that are set approximately 65 and 70 feet back from Forest Drive curb line. The commercial building across the street from that is a 2-story building set approximately 70 feet back from the curb line. So one, in trying to be consistent with locations of structures on Forest Drive, but also because this is a residential structure of 3 stories, to give the residents some relief from the noise of Forest Drive, to push this building further back. Staff believes this can be achieved not by removing parking spaces, but by relocating parking spaces. Mr. Schuman indicated breaking the T by removing several parking spaces. We believe those parking spaces can be added to the end of the T where the dumpster is, or on the American Legion side, thus sliding the building in down. There is enough room within the playground and the stormwater to make up the difference there, just adding the buffering on the other side. So department remains extremely adamant about this condition. That is condition 3. Condition 4 speaks to the affordability, and that the project shall be developed in accordance with section 42 of the Federal Internal Revenue Code, which basically sets that the tenants shall be in accordance with the federal low income housing tax credit program. Just in case this project were to be sold or developed by a different developer, ensure that it was developed with the affordability component that we've talked about all along. Condition 11, Mr. Schuman did speak to this. This is the deed of conservation easement on parcel B that covers that area that was purchased from the homes at the Glen and added to this project that was originally encumbered as a forest preservation area. We want to make sure that is properly encumbered in a conservation easement. So that's what condition 11 is about. So in summation, this project provides much needed affordable housing. As you know, the city's struggled with its affordable housing needs for many years. We feel fortunate that this project will sort of begin to fill that gap. There's so much more opportunity for affordable housing in the city. The connection of Skipper's Lane is literally a relief road or bypass road that's been master planned or talked about for 25 years. And as far as the applicant, we talked quite a bit about the location. If the commission recalls, when we approved the adjacent property, the Village of Providence Point, that developer was required to design the entire road from Newtown Drive all the way to Gemini Drive, even across this. So the location of Skipper's Lane has been set, and for this developer is really built in accordance or designed in accordance to that location, sort of pre-approved location, if you will. I also wanted to mention that the property has been posted properly with notices, 2 notices, both on Forest Drive and Newtown Drive. Notices were sent to adjacent residents and tenants within 400 feet as required by code and advertised in the local newspaper. So all advertising per law. With that, the planning department would encourage the planning commission to approve the project per the 35 recommended conditions. Thank you,
Mr. Smith,
Chairman.
the one other item in the conditions that we had some concern about was the sort of withholding approval on building and grading on this project pending upgrades to the traffic control out on Forest Drive.
Yes.
That was the last sentence of the traffic condition. And we would ask.
Thank you for the reminder. Or yes, the department would be flexible. What we want to ensure is that there is communication with Anne Arundel County and coordination with Anne Arundel County. There is a condition on the Village of Providence Point that requires that upgrade at that intersection. We just want to make sure everything is coordinated properly. I'm happy to recommend removing that last sentence from the condition. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask Mr. Smith some questions?
Sure.
So your reason for the condition of moving building A, okay, and increasing the setback and buffers onto Forest Drive, now that we know that it's residences on all 3 floors. So what effect does buffering have on, and what effect do plantings have on sound and mitigating sound?
Well, Commissioner Wallman, I'm not an expert on sound buffering. So I can't give you decibels and specifics on that, but I certainly can give you from a visual standpoint and a consistency. So I'm dating myself, going back to the Safeway 30 years ago that I worked on and many other projects on Forest Drive, and the relationship of the architecture to Forest Drive, to Aris T. Allen, and the consistency. I mean, frankly, it wouldn't matter whether this was a residential building or commercial building or any structure. Its relationship to Forest Drive is an important relationship regardless, and that there be consistency with how the buildings relate to the street. But more so in this case, because it is residents, to provide some visual buffering relief from a very busy road at probably one of its most busiest intersections with Spa Road. We think it's easily achievable with the adjustments. I'm happy to work with the applicant in doing so.
So 2 questions. What are the adjustments? And the second question would be, what kind of plantings would be year round rather than just during leaf season, right? During 9, 6, 8 months of leaf season.
Good questions, Commissioner Wallman. So I think as Mr. Schuman articulated by by splitting the project at the T of the parking lot. So by removing a couple of the spaces as the line of perpendicular spaces as you enter before you get to the T. Thank you, Terry. And relocating those spaces to the ends of the T. And then shrinking the buffer, this green space between the building A and the sidewalk that's proposed, because you don't have that on the other buildings either. That gives you almost the 20 feet that you need. So that's how I would propose, or staff would propose, frankly, to shift the building, the patio area and gardens closer. And then with that, you really double the amount of space you have between the building and Forest Drive, which gives you the opportunity to then insert evergreen plantings in with deciduous tree plantings for an all-season visual buffer.
Where would you put the dumpster?
A dumpster would stay where it is. It would just
Move.
scoot closer or shift closer to the property line.
Okay. And you said
There's no legal setback requirement for the buffer, and you have already an approved significant forest area next door. You're not putting the dumpster adjacent to anyone's home.
Yeah.
So I have no issue with.
Sorry, I just like that.
Let me make sure I understand. Where would you put this parking onto the American Legion lot?
At either end of the T, you could add those parking spaces.
I see. So you're saying you don't need that kind of pooch out there at the end of
it would just be extending the T. The T would become a larger T, and I'm sure Mr. Schuman is going to have some concern about pushing the dumpster with too close to the
force main, the public easement.
Force main easement, but it's not really a structure. It's just paving. So I don't really see an issue with pushing it to the edge of the easement or even into the easement.
Because it's surface. So you could gain at least one space on the west side, right?
I think you could gain two spaces
one
on
on each
the
side.
west end and 2 spaces on the east end, frankly.
Okay. But moving to another issue, have you seen any kind of written agreement between the applicants and the American Legion about shared parking, or what they've determined called overflow parking? Have you seen any kind of an agreement that says that the American Legion will accept parking?
There's a letter in the package to that effect, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. So I think that is part of the applicant's exhibits. And one of the questions I would have for the applicant is the bollards that are proposed, that either the Willows or the American Legion have control over those. So when either party would need to share with the other side, they would have the ability to remove the bollards, I'm assuming per that agreement. Perhaps a little more specificity may be needed within the agreement to that degree.
Where's the agreement?
It's tab 12. It's a
Okay.
letter of authorization.
All right, good, thanks.
We've actually also been working on filling out a little bit on the parking agreement. We can submit that to supplement that tab before the end of the sort of consideration period here. But everybody is in agreement that there can be shared overflow parking, and everybody is here.
Yeah, I don't see necessarily that you need to remove the bollards, just the agreement that if there's no parking spaces in one, you could go to the other. I think that's the important piece, that somebody's not going to initiate an enforcement action because somebody from the other place is parking there. So I mean personally, I'm happy with what's written, but
well, I don't know what happens if somebody's got a 22-year-old son or daughter who's in the military and they decide to park their car in the American Legion for the next year. How's the American Legion going to feel about that?
Well, you got to read the letter.
I've read it. I'm reading it.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
It's up to the American Legion. There ought to be, they need to, you need to think it through. Who's going to replace the bollards? If there's a lock on them, if there's not a lock on them, who's got the keys? Who can, what does overflow parking mean?
Yeah, maybe that's an idea,
We'll
just to clarify what.
Yeah, we've been working on, we are actually working on the clarifications today. So,
Okay.
We'll submit that immediately to put into part of that packet before you actually, in a situation.
Okay, maybe at our next meeting, you can come back with some clarification there.
What's the sidewalk? What's the pedestrian access between American Legion and this project? Where if a person parked down close to Skipper's Lane or in the middle between Skipper's Lane and the connection between the two, how would they get over to building B or 2?
Well, the paved parts would be both the sidewalk on Skipper's Lane, and they could just walk through the access where the bollard is going to be.
Okay. I'll bring that up later. Thanks.
All right, if there's not other questions, just bring us back to where we started. This is a backfilled urban lot that does not disturb a lot of forest. There's not a significant impact on wetlands. It's supported by the community. We haven't had any adverse comments from the community about the impact. This is going to provide 58 housing units for legitimate workforce housing in a city that is just crying out for affordable housing. I think this is going to be, it's a great looking project. It's going to be a real benefit and bonus to the Forest Drive corridor.
I would suggest that between now and then you think about how somebody who parks and to get between American Legion and these buildings, and maybe a sidewalk alongside at the lower end of the park between the park and building 3. I'm not sure what the landscaping plans and all are.
Mr. Wallman,
and whether a bike rack should be at the park or closer to the entrances of the buildings.
Okay.
And
I see a sidewalk down there, but are you looking for something that would be sort of in the middle of the property?
Yeah, just north of that third building. Think about it and talk about with Mr. Smith. And how many?
Yeah, I agree. I think, if somebody parks like where the hand is now, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm kind of lazy. So if I were going to visit somebody, in building C, rather than walk up to where the bollards are, I'm probably just going to walk through the plantings. Some sort of a sidewalk there.
Thinking, yeah, you think that.
I'm with you, Alex.
It's a thought.
And where's the sidewalk to Forest? Where's the sidewalk to Forest Drive?
It's in the upper right-hand corner by
right. Oh,
yeah.
Where's the crosswalk across Forest Drive?
So right in the middle, above A, yes.
So why is the sidewalk so far away from the crosswalk? Don't you think that the sidewalk should go almost directly to that crosswalk?
There's a whole pedestrian sidewalk that's up there, along Forest Drive. So once you're there, it's no great pain to get to the crosswalk.
Right, but I think the thought is if you're coming out of building A, or really any of the buildings, you're walking to the parking lot and you want to get to this crosswalk, you're going to take the straightest line. You're going to walk, on the side right there where the hand is, and then just going to cut through the vegetation to get to the base of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Anybody else, but again, I'm lazy. I don't want to walk all the way around.
So am I.
You're just going to make so that's something to think about. That often what we see in these kinds of things are what they call goat paths, where basically just the short circuit. Humans want to take the shortest the shortest path. So that's something to think about as another, official pedestrian connection to the base of the crosswalk, because that's typically if you're going to want to get anywhere, outside of the development that's not along Skipper's Lane or whatever, that's the crosswalk you're going to get to, and you want to make that as easy as possible for people.
One of the benefits that you get if you move the whole building A to the right is, and put it way over to the right, is that the people on that side of the building, first of all, would look out on the incredible forests that are at Providence Point. The second thing that you'd get is you wouldn't have this patio area, which is unclear, and what that's going to be used for. And you would vastly expand the garden area over there, and you could really do some creative things with it. The other thing that would happen is if you do put a crosswalk straight to the Forest Drive, a sidewalk straight to the Forest Drive crosswalk, then the people who have porches on the first floor there, which is a great amenity if you're living there, would need some they would be removed from that sidewalk and removed from, thefts of convenience. And you could put up a little railing or a fence or whatever you need to sort of protect them, but they would be buffered considerably from the traffic back and forth to the Forest Drive crosswalk if you just moved it completely over. So consider that one, because the patio area is something that looks to me like dead space. So it's been a pleasure.
Okay, so obviously we're committed to working with the city, and if we're happy to work with Mr. Smith on modifications of that sort. If we can get this to an approval vote, we are on a timeline as we mentioned. Some of our grant funding is restricted, so that it has to be completed by December of 2024. So we would like to get us to a position where we can get obviously an affirmative vote, not a negative vote, but an affirmative vote. But we're certainly happy to continue working with the city about modifications that might improve access or crosswalk and that kind of thing.
Yeah, thanks. I think anybody who's been following along for the last few months is aware of the time constraints. So we appreciate that for sure. So at this point, if we'll just go around and give any other commissioners opportunity for clarifying questions. Anybody else have questions they want to ask of either the applicant or staff?
Not at this time.
I have some questions, mostly about parcel B. So as part of this project, it indicates it's going to be done in a phase, but parcel B is highlighted as to be transferred, right, to the American Legion. And you guys did provide the Garden for the Heroes proposed plan. Is there a timing on that as far as when parcel B will be transferred, what the proposed plan for construction to complete that garden is, and move that forward? I'm curious. Because this, parcel, the American Legion parcel is R2, the proposed developments on R3. And so part of this combined comprehensive plan seems to be a way to get, to look forward to mixed use and so on. But this seems to be a loose end that I didn't see any details on as far as timing other than to be determined.
Yeah, unmutable.
Yeah.
So by nature, all of the things that are filed in the land records, which you say the final plat, the easement documents that would go over parcel B, some of the land transfer to the extent of the road for the city, all those things would be done at closing, which is to say when when the construction actually starts and all plans are final.
So that would be when the final plat comes to the commission to sign. Is that correct?
That's one of those steps that would be the final moment.
Okay, so it really is just, and what I was looking for was assurance that all of those details and things were agreed upon. It's just a matter of execution once the project moves forward.
Correct. Those are all agreed on, and the project can't go forward without those things being baked into the land records.
Understood. Thank you. And then as far as emergency access, I noted somewhere that emergency access was expected to be utilizing that space through the American Legion property. Did I read that wrong? So is emergency access available on Skipper's Lane as well, or is it only through the American Legion pathway through the bollards?
No, emergency access is going to be, emergency access for American Legion is going to be off of Skipper's Lane, off of Forest Drive, and between the two sites. I mean, you remove the bollards, so they'll have full emergency access.
Didn't I see something? Didn't I see something in the application package that looked like turning radiuses, radii that get to the T of the parking lot? I assume that was, for a fire truck entering off Skipper's Lane. Is that, did I read that right?
That's correct. We did a turning we designed this T so a fire truck could come in, back up, and then leave. So that's what that was. But if the fire truck needed to pull the bollards and get out this way, he'd be able to do that.
Right, but having the bollards there, in an emergency without time to, go out and unlock them, you still have access to the site with the fire truck and
Absolutely.
I think through Skipper's Lane.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the bollards stay in place, we still have adequate access, and the fire scrutinized and looked at that through their review. Yes.
Okay, so their acceptance of this design was not predicated on having to remove the bollards.
That's correct. That's why we did that turning template that just showed that they could come in and then back up and then leave. So yes.
Okay.
And then my final question would probably be best answered by Tom Smith regarding the adequate recreational facilities. Standard says, 500 square feet, per unit. I saw that there was an acceptance of, in lieu of utilizing the recreational space of Annapolis Walk, which is 3 acres and less than 0.6, I think, miles away from the site. But then the standard also states that sidewalks cannot be included. I know they mean sidewalks for the parcel itself, but I'm just I'm curious as to what the discussion, if anything, or I'm curious as to why there isn't fees in lieu of for recreation, for adequate recreation facilities. I don't know if you have any insight based on discussion.
Well, my understanding is that when a recreational facility, in this case, the public park at Annapolis Walk, is within a half a mile, that can be included and accepted as part as the recreational facilities for the project. And I believe the Department of Recs and Parks has included the Annapolis Walk Park as part of the accepted recreation facilities for this application, as well as the on-site facilities.
For sure. And the reason I asked that is because when I did the measurement from the parcel line to Annapolis Walk, it was actually 0.6. And the way I read the code, it looked like it could be utilized, but it's in lieu of fees for the upkeep or the improvements of those facilities. So I was just surprised not to see that included, but I could be mistaken.
I can't speak for the Director of Recreation and Parks, but typically a fee in lieu is the last opportunity, on-site, off-site, and then fee in lieu is sort of the last resort.
So I must have read that wrong. So this looks like they approved it as adequate because of off-site availability of that square footage.
Yes, ma'am. Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, hearing.
Yep.
Is that you, Ben? Go ahead.
Yep, it sure is. The last time you guys came to us was a working group, right?
Correct.
And we've had one working group, right?
2 work sessions.
Okay, 2 work sessions. And it seemed like there was a lot left to do and a lot to be desired. And it sounds like we're having a work session right now. It sounds like we want to, people want things different. And it doesn't sound like we've had enough work sessions on this. Now, let's go back into, so I'm not debating. You got 20 spaces over in the American Legion lot that are to be utilized, roughly any spaces or more by the project on the right. Are there any signs in the Legion lot that say parking only for Legion attendees or anything like that? Or are there any tow signs that, scare people off to not park there right now?
Are they any? No,
I just don't want. If you're gonna say there's 20 spots over there and they can share parking, but you got to bollard it up at the top of the development. it almost makes it seem like you don't want people to use those lots, and people, what makes it inviting for them to go use it and feel like they can, vice, thinking, oh, I can't use that, and trying to park on the street somewhere else.
So to answer your immediate question, I don't believe that there are any signs at present, but obviously next door, that lot right now is just a field. So,
right.
There's going to be a shared parking there is a shared parking agreement in your packet that's going to be filled out with some additional details. But, at the moment, again, we're talking about sharing between an empty field and a somewhat unused lot. So that will be taken care of. There's not going to be, there's not going to be towaway signs or anything like that.
It just seems like it's very separated. You got the bollards up top. It's not connected by any paths. You got the sidewalk way at the south and at the bottom, and some at the top. I see 6 handicap spaces. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is that enough for a 58 unit development?
It meets ADA code, yes.
It meets ADA code. Okay. And any handicap bus and no handicap spaces over the American Legion are counting towards that, are they?
They are not.
How many units did you have in here at the last work session?
58, same.
And you have exactly the same. The only differences from the last work session are building movement and the garden, or what else?
Really, from the last work session, we just refined what was discussed at the last work session. There wasn't too many changes from the last work session.
Right. The patio area, is that just an open patio to sit, or can that be used for sports or anything like that?
Connects to the community room, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's outdoor space that connects to the community room that's in there for residents to use for programming, for social events, educational, a variety of things.
Put it on the other side.
It flows to the community building.
Right. So put the patio area on the other side and have the community space on that side also. And move the whole building to the right, and you end up with much more integrated space to the left. Anyway, you've got 2 weeks to think about it.
Can I interject one thing? Because with a work session, we did talk very much about having, can you zoom out a little bit, Terry? So one of the comments was you wanted Skipper's Lane and the architecture to address that so it felt more welcoming, and not that we were pushed so far back in away from Skipper's Lane. So we pushed that down. It was very important to align the axis of that drive coming in between those buildings on the axis of the building up above. So you have a focal point, which happens to be the entry of your property. That is very important to be on focus to that drive. It is very important. If we push that over, you lose that context.
Yeah, but you're looking down a whole lane of parked cars. That's what, 150.
But it's not. I disagree with you.
I'm not going to debate with you.
I thought you wanted to discuss it. Sorry.
I mean, I think that you made a good point. I think what we would refer to that as the terminating vista. That's maybe a little bit hyperbole in this case, but I think that's a good point.
And one last question: the width to the sidewalks on the south and the width of the lanes on Skipper's Lane, are they concurrent? Are they congruent with the expected width we're going to have from the adjacent development on the east?
Yes, you have two 10-foot drive aisles, one in each direction. Then you have 2 5-foot bike lanes, and then you have 6-foot sidewalks.
Separated by how much green space between the bike lane and the sidewalk?
In a second, I think it's like 6 feet.
That's substantial. That is a nicety of this drawing right there. That is.
But I would like to just point out, so that's on the north side. On the south side, we were putting the sidewalk up against there's quite a drop off in grade here.
Yeah, you're reading my mind, Terry. Keep going.
So we pushed the sidewalk in this area up against the curb on this side, but we have the green in between the sidewalk over here. Otherwise, we'd be looking at a retaining wall.
Is there any way to, I mean, if you give, Alex is better at this than I am, but if you get at least 1 foot of grass, doesn't that help keep people in traffic separated, Alex, or something?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there's a bike lane there does provide
Yeah.
additional buffer. So, you know,
That's true.
if
That's
somebody
true.
does happen to, you know, a couple of kids are walking and they're mucking around and one of them steps off the curb, that you know, it's not like they're stepping into a travel lane. There is some buffer there. So it worries me less than.
Yeah, and we've been talking
The
about
fact those are
Skipper's
6
Lane.
feet the fact that those are 6 feet sidewalks, I mean, I think that's 2 feet over the minimum
Yeah,
requirement.
It's
so
substantial.
really
And
nice.
we're talking about Skipper's Lane in all these past years with all the developments around here as being a thoroughfare for kids to get to and from Annapolis Middle for all of the neighborhoods around there. So
Yeah.
that seems to be more than adequate down there. So
And
okay.
I'll just add, I mean, once you get past the Riders Glen and the slope there, it does go back out and you have a green area between the curb and or Providence Point. So they have green on both sides. We had to push the sidewalk up here, otherwise we're looking at walls.
A wall next to a sidewalk.
Yeah, wall, and then you'd have a guardrail on top of that. So just
But most of the traffic is going to be on the south side. The kids going to school are going to be on the
Probably
south
so.
side,
That's a good point.
that's why we have
not
6
on the north side.
You do have the bike lane though, like Alex said, though.
and you have a 6 foot wide sidewalk. I mean, it's like you said, it's 2 feet.
Is there a design picture that shows that like cross section wise, as if we're standing on it looking down it?
Yeah.
I'm
if
sure-
give
Do you
me a
have that
sec.
yet, or you're not that far along?
I'll get it. Hold on.
That's the last thing I want, Terry. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It's coming.
Mr. Schuman, you're quite a director tonight.
Yeah.
Thank
Make
you.
sure
You've been great. Thank you.
and please zoom in on it. I've got a small screen here.
So this, I mean, you can see that the
There
road,
you go.
so
Yep.
this is the, yeah, you got the separation. And then the sidewalk up against the, and it's 6 feet, but you also have the width of the curb. So everything's, 6 foot 8 inches for the width of the curb. So it's not from the face of curb to the back of sidewalk. It's 6 feet of clear sidewalk. 5 foot, 10 foot lanes.
Would you be changing the alignment of Skipper's Lane terribly if you put, if you kind of flipped what's on the north side to the south side? In other words, you put in, as Ben was talking about, the green median between a sidewalk and a street, and you did that on the south side, and then you had a sidewalk tight to the curb on the north? What would that do to the alignment of Skipper's Lane?
It would, I mean, it's really, what would it do to the neighbor, to the Providence Point? It would just affect them.
But you'd still.
I don't think that works. If you look at the right-hand side of this drawing,
Yeah.
it would disjoint it. And I think if I remember correctly, there are some things in Providence Point sort of up in that corner that we have to go back and look at those other things.
All right. It's a thought raised by Mr. Sale.
Mhm.
All right.
Again, this is people should be driving 20, 25 miles an hour. So it's not like Forest Drive.
That's what you think.
We hope. Well, I mean, the discussion for another day, but traffic calming is always welcome eventually if you need it. But that's not germane to this discussion right now anyway.
I have one final question, then I'll let everybody go.
Okay.
This is based on what Ms. Pico was asking. Mr. Smith, when the Department of Parks calculates that, quote, distance from a development or from a place to a recreational facility, do they calculate it by the actual amount of distance a person needs to travel in terms of, going to a street and having to make a left and then walking 2 blocks and having to make a right and then continuing on and so forth and so on? Or do they calculate it as simply a straight line as the crow flies? Disregarding what actually people have to encounter in order to get to the park.
Understood, Commissioner Waldman. I believe it is delineated as a radius drawn around the subject property, regardless of what route one has to walk or drive or cycle to get to that amenity. It is within a half mile. The only policy that we have added to that is if that recreational facility was across water, such as across the creek. We did not allow that in the case of the Eastport Shopping Center. There were recreational facilities on the other side of Back Creek within a half a mile. And the Recreation Parks and Planning and Zoning said those should not count. But it is a radius around the project.
Well, and this is why I brought this up. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is why I brought this up, because it is actually over a half mile. I mean, I know we're getting close, but it was 0.6 from the edge of the closest corner of that property. And the reason I walked it, it's 0.6. And so I'm just being like, is it truly 1/2 from the middle of the parcel? Is it the edge of the parcel? Where was that calculated?
I would have to defer, honestly, Ms. Pico, to Recreation and Parks, and I can provide you with a definitive answer in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Okay, hearing no other questions, at this point, I will declare the public hearing open. And since we don't have anybody signed up, I think this will remain open until our next meeting. So at the beginning of our next meeting, if anybody signs up, we'll hear any testimony that people might have at the beginning of the next meeting and go from there. Okay, so at this point, I think we're ready to move on to, first, thank you all for, for your work and presentation here. It's good to finally get this in front of us. And, we look forward to having, anybody from the public come talk to us next week or in 2 weeks if they wish to do so. So thanks again, and thanks to staff. So at this point, let's move on to our next item is a review of the budget for the CIP. So I guess Mr. Gerald's going to lead that.
Yes, thank you. And good evening, everyone. Good discussion of the Willows. I appreciate that. So yes, I'm going to present the CIP. Eric Lashinsky's here, and he's going to tag team with me because some of these projects are still in planning and haven't actually come over to Public Works yet. I'm going to talk initially, and I have a presentation that's coming up now, but I'm going to talk initially about all of the projects that are funded, but I'm really going to focus in on the new projects as we move through this presentation. So next slide, please. So this next slide, and it's a lot of words here, but these are all of these aren't even all. There's 3 slides here of the projects that are being funded this year. The ones in yellow are the new projects. The ones in white were the previous projects. And these are most of the projects that are moving forward into FY24. There's a few that are in various stages of implementation that don't require additional funding. But most of the projects that are moving forward do require some. We've had a lot of inflation, so we're adding costs. We're on some of these, we're moving from design to construction, so we're asking for the construction money. There's a variety of reasons for that, but these are the initial ones. If there's any questions about any of these, I'm happy to address them. But again, the ones in yellow are the ones we're going to focus in on in just a minute. There'll be individual slides for each of those. So Eric, let's go ahead and move on to the second page. So this is the rest of the general fund projects that are receiving funding in FY24. And again, just a couple of those are new projects. The rest are ones that are just moving forward. Some of these have been in the pipeline for a number of years and are just gradually working their way through. Some of these were new last year and are just getting the second tranche of funding. Next slide. So these are our enterprise fund projects. Again, just a couple of new ones, which we'll talk about in detail, but the other ones are moving. You see the utilities projects. Those are our annual allotments for sewer rehab and water distribution rehab. And then occasionally we have a water tank that requires mostly corrosion control and painting. So most of these are just projects that are in the CIP every year and receive new funding every year. So we can continue with those programs. So Eric, let's move forward to the new projects. So Acton, this is actually Acton's Landing or Acton's Cove Waterfront Park. This is actually a project that the residents talked to our state senator and showed her some of their concerns, and she went back and got us $100,000 of state grants to allow us to move forward with this project. So the initial scope will be to do a feasibility study and sort of a master plan for what needs to be done. Eric Eric, you can weigh in on that, but Eric's already started some work on that with the residents, some public meetings. You want to talk a bit about that, Eric?
Yeah, we did meet with the adjacent HOA from the condo association that was, kind of credited with bringing the money in for this project, I guess. And we have a pretty good understanding what they like to see. Most of it's related to these kind of drainage improvements that happen when there's a sometimes just a high tide and backs up onto the site. And so we're looking at landscape improvements first, raising that walkway and putting in plantings alongside that can accommodate the stormwater, but there'll probably also be some engineering scope related to the drainage. And we actually have a landscape architect already involved. So the project's going to be moving forward pretty soon.
Is that drainage issue? So freshwater, or is it actual salt water that blows up? Just that.
It's a little, it can be both, Alex. Yeah. So if we have a big rain event, it can be flooded from rainwater, and occasionally the tide's high enough for it to push up through the storm drain here as well. Yeah. So it could be both.
Yeah.
So we'll address the salt kills all the grass.
I'm sorry.
So the salt kills all the grass and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so to address this, the boardwalk, the dock, that's a bit aged, so that will be replaced as well. So there's a number of items that will be taken care of with this. Just by way of explanation, as we're starting this, you see that $100,000 came from the state, $105,000 was requested. We apply a 5% admin charge to all of these projects to pay for all of the city time and effort on these. Typically, the grants don't pay that charge, so we add that to the CIP to cover those costs. So you'll see that on all these, that there's a difference between those numbers.
So who is responsible for maintaining this park otherwise? Is that the condo association or is it the city?
It's the city. It's a city park, and Recreation and Parks maintains it.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of overuse on it, a lot of animals, a lot of people, they have to redo it all the time because of that. But I'm sure these improvements with the water will help that as well too.
Yeah, you're right. This almost functions as a dog park. It really gets a lot of use throughout the day. It's not just an after work type of thing.
It's a dog park.
Yeah.
There's no way to say about it. I don't think that's what's killing the grass, Alex, not the
No.
salt water.
Okay,
Yeah.
next slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is also obviously a new park. So this is, in case you hadn't seen an aerial view of our solar park out on the closed landfill off of Defense Highway. That is our solar park. 55,000 solar panels are out there. It generates about 16.8 kilowatts or megawatts of energy. So we're going to add some pollinator friendly gardens out there. It's a great place for that. It's going to be 3 phases over the next few years. So we are using capital reserve money, which is cash funding that it's not bond funding. It's cash that we have available for capital projects. And I think it's about $50,000 each year for 3 years. And again, that $2,500 is for the admin charge. We're also thinking of adding goats out there one of these days too, so we don't have to use lawnmowers as much as we do. It's about 80 acres out there, so that would be another good environmental project. Eric, do you want to talk about this project of water access?
Yeah, sure. There's obviously been a lot of attention put towards improving and expanding public water, protecting existing public water access. We've been working on a public water access plan for the last year, and one of the realizations is that there are a number of sites that could be improved, but we need to do the advanced planning work to get them to that point where they become standalone capital projects. And so this, I anticipate, will be a continuing fund that identifies priority sites that need some attention. And so we've put in 2 key sites for this year on one on Weems Creek, the Tolson Street Park, which was a newly dedicated park this past year on Weems Creek, which has only one existing public water access point. That's the Tucker Street Park. So it has the fewest public access points of any of our creeks. And then the other site is Northwest Street Park, the image on the right, which is an existing street end park that has really minimal access to the water. I mean, the view is kind of blocked by some invasives, but it's on a bluff. It's between the St. Anne Cemeteries at the end of Northwest Street. So it's close to Stanton Center. And basically the idea is to study the potential to put a floating dock there. But it's sort of a formidable site condition. So we have funding in here, just basically clarify what kind of public access we can provide at I should say with Tolson Street, it's a existing natural path to the water where you then encounter just a jungle of Phragmites. So, we want to improve water access both these locations, but they both have their own challenges. And so we're going to get started on these in the coming year.
Yeah, and we actually have 2 CIBs to address water. Maybe more. Well, in fact, it's more. But we have 2 that we're just starting that are going to be continuous projects, as Eric mentioned. Each year get funded. This one is really to sort of create or improve water access. And then we have a second one that I'll talk about in just a minute when it comes up. But it's going to improve the facilities at places where there's water access. So whether it's the docks or some erosion control issues or things like that, it actually is going to improve existing water access facilities. So we're moving forward with those separately. They're really kind of separate issues. And so we've separated them into 2 different CIPs. Okay, Eric.
Yeah. I guess I could talk about this one too.
Yeah.
This is a big signature trail project that we've been working on for probably the last 2 years now, 18 months, 2 years. I mean, it's a connection from King George Street at the St. John's College Boathouse across the College Creek waterfront, under Rowell Boulevard, and then alongside St. Anne Cemetery to Calvert Street. Basic idea here is to get people coming into the city by bike from the B&A Trail into downtown in a safe, pleasant way. You know, King George Street is very constrained for cyclists. It's there's really very little space to bike safely along King George Street. And we looked at a whole variety of options, and this one is really the best solution. It's obviously a big budget project. It would be the city's first boardwalk over water trail. And it would really help to activate College Creek, which also doesn't have a whole lot of existing public water access that is truly public. You know, I let people think about St. John's as a public water access site, but it's St. John's campus, and it's limiting. And you know, they have concerns about how many people should be using that. So we think this is going to be a great amenity. And we've completed 30% design on this. We have state funding to move into the next phase of design. And, you know, I don't foresee having a problem finding the funds to realize this project. So it's a pretty exciting one, I think.
Yeah, if any of you have been out to Kent Island and rode the boardwalk out there that goes across water and kind of weaves around and follows 50 for a while and then weaves away from it, it you know, it kind of would smack of that sort of a concept. It's a really great concept.
Have you had feedback from any of the other relevant boards and commissions, like the Environmental Commission, or I would imagine the Port Wardens would want to talk about this? Have any of them had any issues other than maybe like not affecting the living shoreline kind of stuff?
You know, we haven't gone to those boards yet. We've been mostly focusing on the stakeholders, the adjacent properties. You know, so St. John's College, the Bloomsbury Square community, and the St. Anne's Cemetery, but they're on our list. I think we're trying to resolve some of the alignment issues before going to those commissions. But yeah, we are definitely working around that living shoreline, as you said. And, you know, it's Port Wardens, certainly we would have to go to them. We want to have a more resolved concept, I think, first. So we're pretty close to that.
Gotcha.
And now we're kind of curious to see how SHA is going to respond when we propose to go under their roadway. So
yeah. Well, when you go, the Anacostia Trail goes under Route 50. So
that's a great point. Yep.
And it's interesting because the clearance there is really under Route 50. When you ride under it, you almost have to feel like you duck. It's not a lot. So I imagine it's probably the same thing under Route.
Probably so. This would be similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Eric. Another water access feature. So this is at the end of Duke of Gloucester, and you're looking down from the end of Duke of Gloucester over towards the Eastport Bridge. This is a really cool concept of we're going to have sort of a viewing area above this. So you would exit the sidewalk from Duke of Gloucester onto this landing area. It would be like a dock almost, but more viewing. And then you would walk down to the water, and there would be a floating pier down below there. Again, you know, this is an ambitious project that's going to have a lot of stakeholder involvement, a lot of environmental concerns, and plus some real estate ownership issues. We're not exactly sure who owns that piece of property. I think it's just beyond the church property, but we're not sure it belongs to SHA who owns that bridge. So anyway, a lot of issues to work through. Anything else you want to add, Eric, to that project? This is another one of Eric's projects.
No, I mean, I think, you know, clearly there's a trend here in these new projects. I mean, we're really, there's a big investment here in public water access, and we're identifying, I think partly through this public water access plan, just a lot of opportunities in gaps that could provide other types of access. So we're really trying to make some moves here.
Yeah, and we've proposed to use bond funding to get this started, but there may be grant opportunities once we get into this a bit because there's money available for these types of projects.
Yeah. Okay. This is
the one I mentioned before. This is to improve the facilities that we already have in place. And the picture certainly is a good example of that, of a deteriorated dock. So this is intended to be an annual project to address some of those things. The first year would be sort of to do a survey and condition assessment of all the existing facilities and develop a prioritized list of those that need to be addressed first. And then we'll continue to work through those in upcoming years.
Good. Fantastic.
Okay, Gibraltar Avenue. So Gibraltar is off of West Street out on the west end of West Street. It's a very commercial street if you're not familiar with it. About the first 20 or 30 feet of the street coming off of West Street is actually owned by the city, but the rest of it is private. It's in bad condition and it's gotten worse because of Monarch School parents and other buses that use it. So we're funding this project to start trying to determine who actually owns it. It's not the city; it was never conveyed to the city, so ownership is difficult to establish. But we're going to do that legal research, and then the road doesn't meet city standards, so it's going to have to be widened to meet our standards, and it'll probably be a complete reconstruction because it's in really bad shape. So that all will follow in future years, but this will just get the ball rolling as far as doing the legal work and trying to do the transfer.
Does that have to do with unknown ownership rights in the old WB&A right away? Is that the part that's unknown?
No, I don't think so. This sort of runs perpendicular to that, right?
Oh.
So this is its own unique situation that this road was built and was never conveyed. And I think the original owners own, the parcels owned to the center of the road, but those have been sort of lost in the process over the years. And so it's just very unsure, but we'll figure it out. Okay, next one, Eric. So now that we're wrapping up the maintenance facility for Public Works, Parks desperately needs a park maintenance facility in Truxton Park. That picture that you can see is a trailer that's been leased for a number of years, and the city continues to pay that lease cost even though the trailer is badly deteriorated. So the thought is that when Public Works moves out of Spa Road, that the west side, which is what we're operating out of now, would be used temporarily for Park and Rec, so that we could demolish these existing facilities and then do planning and design for a new facility. It'll be much smaller than what the Public Works facility would be, and hopefully it won't take 10 years to get that one done. But this will get the ball rolling on that project.
Great.
Spa Road sidewalk. So this is the gap from Forest Drive to Hilltop, where there's no sidewalk on either side. So this is an infill sidewalk project, which we don't do very often. Mostly we just upgrade existing sidewalks, but this is an obvious hole in the network that needs to be filled. So we're going to get started with this. And again, these sidewalks sound really easy to implement, but they're not, because there's always land issues. There's always retaining wall issues. So there'll be a lot that goes into this, but this will get the ball rolling.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I meet with a lot of civic groups all over the city. This has been a big priority for the South Forest Business Association and for many years, and it's obviously close to a number of schools. So having that continuous connection along Spa Road is particularly important. But if you go there today and you look at the condition close to Forest Drive, you'll see why it's complicated. I mean, there's actually a grade change. So it's not an easy solution, but I'm glad we're moving this one forward.
Okay, so this is, each year we do, and this used to be Lisa Greco until she retired, but we do these traffic studies to study, areas that have particular issues. And then when we wrap up the studies, there's never money sufficient to implement the recommendations. So this is another one that we're starting. This is going to be an annually funded project to provide funding for those types of things. And typically they're not large ticket items, but this will provide at least the first year about $130,000 to address some of those. Some of it's signage, some of it's crosswalks. There's a lot of different things that come out of those studies, and this just provides funding to allow those to be done. This is similar. This is for repairs, major repairs and improvements to our parking garages and parking lots. Obviously, Hillman won't be done under this because that would be a private garage for 30 years. But all of the other garages are starting to age out a bit and need some investment to bring them back up to where they should be. And so this funding will allow that to be done each year. So for instance, we're replacing an elevator in Gotts Court. And so it's those types of things that they're just at the end of its useful service life and needs to be redone. Okay, so we're getting 2 new electric buses in transportation. And so of course they need the charging infrastructure to go with it. So this is for the Department of Transportation maintenance facility. They're going to get charging infrastructure for those 2 new buses.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Great. Anybody have any general questions for Mr. Jarrow or Mr. Lushinsky? Or any questions about other projects they didn't go over? But go ahead.
It's aggressive, it's creative, and it's been long waited for. A lot of these things have been ideas that have been bounced around forever, and now you're getting stuff done on them. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that one of the things that I see here is these sort of ongoing projects aimed at making sure you have money in the budget to do maintenance, especially as you start to develop these newer amenities. I mean, in looking at I know we're just talking about the CIP here, but if you look at the overall city budget, would you say that some increase is there, but it's really intended to make sure that you have sufficient funding for maintenance efforts, so we don't build some of this new stuff and then have no way to ever maintain it? Is that a fair statement? If you sort of look at the budget holistically?
It is to some degree. These are capital projects, so they can't just be maintenance. They actually have to be capital, and by definition, capital extends the service life of the asset. So maintenance just allows the asset to realize its service life. So it's things like painting and pothole repairs and things like that, where this is improvements or major repairs that actually extend the service life. So that's the object. And we haven't had enough of that type of money. We have maintenance money, but not for those major, more significant repairs.
Yeah. And I echo what Bob said. I'm really happy to see, especially the water access stuff. And of course, we've seen a lot of that in the news over the last few years. But I really like the idea of these sort of unused interesting little pieces of property, and I'm just happy to see people taking an interest in that, because they tend to be these just sort of like overgrown things that you always wonder, geez, I wonder what's behind that bush. And I think that's being creative here to turn something that's basically very not used now that could turn into something that makes the place really, really nice. So kudos.
Yeah, I think one that we should talk about, Eric, is because it kind of got caught in the gap because it was created mid-year is Gateway Park.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Gateway Park, but it's that little piece of property, and it's owned partly by the state and partly by the Navy. That's right behind Archives along Route Boulevard, right before College Creek. And it's, we had homeless people living back there, and it was just a mess. And that's another great piece of property. It's waterfront property that we could make into a park. So we're moving forward. We had a contractor go in and clean out all of the trash and debris that was in there. It was just amazing how much of that there was back there. But the county's going to fund a feasibility and master planning study for that. We're talking to both the state and the Navy about doing some sort of either a long-term lease or an acquisition of the property. It's split right down the middle between the Navy and the state. The state owns the site on Route Boulevard. The Navy owns the part that's the view of the new hotel along King George. But that's a great project that just nobody ever thought about until the mayor did. So a lot of these are the mayor's ideas. He's a great idea guy, I can tell you.
And the Navy has actually been pretty receptive about putting in, a phase 1 passive trail, basically just to activate the site, which is great to hear. So it'll be done in phases, and, we just want to get people, we want to get into a place where people can start using the site in just sort of a passive way, and then do the feasibility study and see what else is possible. But there's still railroad tracks through there from when the train line came across College Creek. So it's a very interesting site for sure.
Yeah, I've walked that back there for exactly that purpose, just to see what's back there, and yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Anybody have more questions either on those things or things that weren't highlighted?
I'll supply an opposing view from everybody else. When you show the 150,000 for a pollinator garden, I'm sure there's a ton of people that would cringe in this city at that. Like, really? Like, we can't just spread out some seeds. We need 150 grand, and we can't get sidewalks or in certain places, and we can't get bike connections finalized to make Alex Klein's bike path look better, instead of getting a D or a C grade. So it worries me when we got things like that in there. But of course, 150,000 is chump change in the overall budget, right? So that's my opposing view for you. You got to balance this out. That's the only negative I got. Otherwise, it was nice. It was nice.
It's expensive to do stuff.
It's
God.
ridiculous.
I mean, anyway, I'm not going to comment. It's expensive to do things. How much more does it cost municipalities to do things than it costs a private corporation?
Tons. They just say yes to things. And it's our tax dollars, man. 150,000 for a pollinator garden, really?
Seriously, are municipalities any less efficient at spending money than businesses are?
I don't have that research data to give to you.
I got Mr. Gerald on the stand here. Come on.
Oh, you're asking me that? I thought you were asking Mr. Sale that.
No,
I'm not sure that it's that much more expensive. I mean, costs have gone up for everybody in construction. It's sort of an amazing, but they've gone up for everything, the food you eat and, all the services we get. But construction costs have just skyrocketed. And for a while there, the labor, we were in such a short supply of construction workers that labor was just going out of sight too. These companies were paying construction personnel a lot of money to work. That's sort of is cooling off now with the interest rates going up and the decline in projects. But I'm not sure that the government costs are that much higher than commercial costs.
Is it fair to say that the nature of some of the government projects tend to be more expensive because they involve things like right-of-way acquisition and really thorny things like that, where, you know, a private project might just not deal with those kinds of things, so avoid the costs? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and they certainly have more expertise in that whole process of acquiring property than what we do. We just don't do that very often, and it's a real difficult thing for us to get through.
Well, I think the difference here too is in the public sector, you also have to do your due diligence to ensure that you're paying the appropriate costs, right? As a private corporation, if I have an extra $1 million and I want to do something on my own private land, I just allocate the budget and off we go. On public service, you have to actually do the study, determine if it's feasible, determine what the long-term impacts are, what those costs actually are going to be, and then get the decision to move forward. So some of that pre-work isn't necessarily a key factor in the private sector.
How much money does the solar park generate per year? Do we know?
I have those numbers, but I don't have them at my fingertip. I'd be glad to email you that, all that. But yeah, we know that very well. So really, it's three sources. One is that we pay less for the power that we get from that than we would otherwise. So that's a cost savings, obviously. We get money from the lease of that property, so they're paying ground lease, and then we get a certain amount. I think, well, I'm not even gonna. I don't remember what the exact number was, but we get a certain amount based on the capacity, the generation capacity of those panels. So the part that we bought, we don't get that cut of, but the remainder, which is I think it's 12 megawatt. We're getting a payment each year for that capacity. So I'll provide that to the chair, and then he can share that to you. It's an interesting thing.
Surely.
Well, I would make a motion that we recommend to the city council that the capital improvement budget as presented should be approved.
Can
Well,
we do that without public opinion?
Are we? Well, are we?
Public hearing?
Are we done with questions? So actually, I was going to raise sort of similar question. If we're done with questioning at this point, going to open the public hearing. And you know, I was thinking about this earlier, that if I remember the last, I guess this is the fifth time now that we've done this since I've been on the commission. Generally, we don't have a lot of public input. And I know there's you know, that the budget has got a fairly short timeline on it, and I think we could, if we all agreed, we could sort of amend our typical procedure of holding a public hearing over between two meetings. You know, in this case, maybe we could, as far as I know, we don't have anybody signed up to speak on this. But you know, if the rest of the commission was amenable, we could change our typical policy and just have the public hearing open here and then close it, and you know, deliberate on a recommendation, and you know, put this be done with this tonight. If any people feel that's appropriate, I certainly would entertain a motion. But let me first, at this point, open the public hearing, so that's officially open. And I'm correct, there's nobody signed up to speak on this?
No, I don't believe so. I have not heard of any submitted testimony.
So, you know, if everybody's amenable, certainly, you know, we could close the public hearing and deliberate and have a vote on a recommendation.
Well, is there a pressing need to vote on it today? Is there a timeline? I just hate to be changing the rules in the middle of it just for our convenience. Well,
I guess that's a question for Mr. Jarrell and Mr. Lashinsky. If you know what, you know, we would wrap this up in 2 weeks, and is that what does that do for your timeline?
That's fine. The council doesn't vote on the full budget, including the CIP, until June. I think it's a June, might be a June 8th meeting, but it's in early June. So yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt we'll have anybody speaking or anybody speaking against it, but I just don't like to change procedure in the middle of it, just if there's no reason to.
Yeah, that's fair. It's, as long as we're not, up against the, any time frame. So that's fine. So we'll leave the public hearing open until the next meeting on this and pick it up then after talking about the Willows. So thank you, Dave and Eric. Really appreciate it.
Actually, Alex, I'm thinking maybe we should just do it before the Willows and just get it out of the way. Because the Willows may take longer.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
it's up to you.
I don't know. Either way, whether
We could get
before or after, it should be pretty cool. So.
David Gerald and Eric Lashinsky get out of here sooner.
True. That's
I will
true.
not argue with that.
We'll give
Gerald's already headed for the door, for crying out loud.
All right. Well, thank you both. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Okay, so we have a couple more pieces of business to finish up here. So we're on letter F, unfinished business. So we have one piece of unfinished business here is that we're at our statutory limit of 45 days on issuing an opinion, an opinion on SDP 2022-003, which is the 161 West project that we talked about in April, that we approved in April. For various reasons, we have not made that limit. So I'd like to extend that 30 days to make sure that we, just officially have the extension to be able to get that done. So our 45 days was actually 3 days ago. So we're over that, but it's at our discretion to extend that, based on circumstances with other things we've been doing that we can talk about next. But
why do we need 30 more days?
I would entertain a motion to extend that 30 days. And the reason I wanted to make 30 days is just so that we make sure that we have enough time to get something that we're comfortable with. This is a bit of a new process for us. So I want to make sure that we have enough time to get that done.
Can we expect to see something before 2 weeks?
I would hope so.
I mean, this was the least contentious project we've had in a long time. It was pretty much unanimously liked.
Right.
So
Yeah, no,
I would think it'd be in a week we could have something.
What's the problem?
I guess the new process he's talking about.
Just a question of the process of what the order and opinion looks like, how it's written. So, based on our experience over the last few months,
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we have a good template going forward for these things. I agree with you. This was about as uncomplicated a project as you can get that we deal with. So, it's a good one to work a new process on because it's not that complicated. So I just ask everybody's patience to let us get on and get that finalized. So I'd entertain a motion to extend that deadline an additional 30 days.
I'll make that motion to extend it 30 days.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
Any more discussion on that?
My discussion is the new process. I get it. And if we can get it done before 30 days, let's go for 15, but if we don't, that's fine. We still got the 30, like you said, right?
Yeah, I agree. We'll all strive to maybe get this
The next meeting.
Get this done for the next meeting.
What do you mean we all are going to strive? What do we have to do?
Well, when we get something from council, we'll work it with council, and when we get something, we'll all do our best to review it as quickly and expeditiously as possible.
Well, here's what.
So,
I would like to amend the motion. I would like to, I'm willing to, that the deadline for our deliberation be 30 days, but the deadline for us to see something be within at least 24 hours before our next meeting, that we get to see a draft finding. And that message be sent to our outside counsel. How's that? We need to see something. If there's going to be discussion about what we like or don't like about the templates and what's involved, then we need the time to look at it. It shouldn't come in at the last minute. And and we need to light a fire here.
yeah, I agree with that. I'm not going to make a motion to that effect, but I think the point's been made. But if somebody wants to make that motion and second it, that
Here, let me clarify it. That we will deliberate on the findings for 161 West Street. We should put it in for 2 weeks for our next meeting, and then if necessary, postpone it again. That's really what we should do. And secondly, and so that's what I'm going to say, is that we're going to postpone it simply till our next meeting. And secondly, that we send a letter from our chairman that we would like to see a draft findings for that project at least 24 hours before our next meeting.
so you're making that motion?
I am.
Is anybody going to second that?
I'll second that emotion.
Any further discussion on that motion?
Well, is the first motion withdrawn then?
Yes, I clarified it.
Yep.
Well, but the first motion was made
No,
by
no,
Ben.
I amended it. Pardon me. I amended that.
So
Amended
we're good. So we're at this point, we can vote on that amendment. So all in favor of Bob's amendment, say aye.
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 How many is
So
that?
how many ayes is that? Raise
Enough.
your hand, we'll count.
Which sale?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Can we do that without Ben withdrawing his motion? That's the only thing that can.
That's what I was point of order,
Oh.
because I think Ben needs to withdraw his motion, or Ben needs to amend his motion before we can move
Yeah,
forward, or Bob can make
right.
an intro a new motion.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's where I was confused.
Bob wants to offer an amendment to the motion, and if he wants to offer an amendment, we all have to agree to that amendment, not just
Well,
me.
no, the person who
No.
made the amendment has to agree to it.
Do you?
That Bob obviously agrees to the amendment he made. So
Well, no,
it
he
would
was,
be-
well, the first motion was from Ben. Ben made the
That's
first
right.
motion
For 30 days, yeah.
for 30
Hey, look,
days.
let's make this easy. I withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
Let's start over.
Thank you.
All right?
Okay.
Even though it's not necessary, let's just do it and make it easy. All right, I withdraw my motion. There's nothing on the table. Go ahead, Bob. Make your motion now.
I repeat what I said before. I move that our deliberation on the findings on that project, 161 West Street, be held at our next meeting. And that secondly, a letter be sent over the signature of our chairman to our council, asking that we have a draft findings at least 24 hours before the next meeting.
I'll second that motion.
And, all right, Ben seconds that. So any further discussion? So all in favor, say aye.
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 So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5.
Woo, all right.
Motion passes. And I say nay, because that's not what I originally asked for, but that's fine. So, but the motion passes. So we will do, I will do that as the motion states. Okay, thanks. That was resolved, and I don't know about you guys, but I need to go take a refresher on Robert's Rules of Order. I'm a little I can't even say I'm a little rusty. I'm just a little ignorant. I have to say. So anyway, but thank you, and we'll get that done. But in response to the applicant there, I think it's, it's good that we try to get that done as soon as possible because, they are waiting to, I'm sure, to get that project rolling.
I don't know.
Okay.
They've not done it for so many years thus far. So,
Well, I'm sure at this
and they've
point.
had
they're-
previous approvals.
Yeah. Okay, so next item is a new business, and we don't have any new business, and then the last one is communication. So this is and we'll finish up here before 10 o'clock, but under communications, just the one thing that I wanted to mention is about the village, the appeal on the opinion and order for the village at Providence Point. So as the commission and the city knows, we've been working on responding to that. So I'm just gonna read a little statement about what we've been doing. So, as everybody knows, we issued our opinion and order on March 31st of 2022 on the Village at Providence Point project. And then subsequently, in a January 13, 2023 order, Judge Crooks of the Circuit Court of Anne Arundel County vacated certain elements of the forest conservation assessment contained in the Planning Commission's original opinion and order and remanded the matter back to the Planning Commission. So I want to let the public know that the Planning Commission has issued a supplemental opinion and order on April 26, 2023, in accordance with the remand instructions issued by the Circuit Court in the hearing sheet. The Commission undertook this task with the utmost care and responsibility. In producing this supplemental order and opinion and order, we reviewed all of the evidence and testimony in the record. We did not consider any new evidence or testimony. The Commission carefully considered the existing evidence in support and in opposition to the variance request to remove 64 significant trees. The Commission concludes that the evidence before it satisfies the variance criteria under the city code and therefore reaffirms its approval of the variance. In accordance with the remand instructions contained in the court order, this supplemental opinion and order serves to supplement the facts and findings contained in our original opinion and order, which otherwise remains in full effect, except as amended by the supplemental order and opinion. That supplemental order and opinion can be found in eTracket under project number PD 2019-001, or if you're not familiar with how to use eTracket, you can contact the Department of Planning and Zoning for additional details on how to access this document. But it's out there, and I thank the Commission for its hard work, for everybody's hard work on getting that done. So been a road, but it's done, and thank you all. So that's all I had to say on that item for communications, which brings us to our last item, which is adjournment.
Before that,
would you be so kind, Mr. Klein, as to circulate a final copy of that,
okay,
of that PP opinion? Because Teresa, Tom, Ben were not nearly, and David were not nearly as involved as others were, and it's a really instructive opinion. I mean,
yeah, actually, so I did send that around
from it, and a lot of it. One of the things to learn is sort of the discipline that sometimes we need to show is to go back to the code and look at it. Just look at it. It's easy to access it on the computer through the city website, but it's really worth your time reading. It's very tightly done.
Yeah, I did send it around prior to.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry.
No, Alex, we got a final version, but it was a good 2 weeks before the confirmation that it was signed. I didn't get a signed, after it was signed, I didn't get the final copy.
I think we should.
I thought I sent the signed copy around yesterday.
Would you
Okay,
mind?
I could have missed it.
Oh,
I think I
I,
sent it. I'm pretty sure I sent it around yesterday, but if anybody doesn't have it, what I'll do is I'll send you the link and e-track it. So you'll download the version that everybody in the world gets to from e-track.
Never mind, you did send it yesterday. I thought it was, you're right. It was 16 pages, right?
yeah,
Yep.
Got it.
it's really.
Okay,
good.
but I'll email the link around to e-track it. So in case anybody asks you for it, I think the best thing to always do is send people the link rather than email the document. That way, you know, they're always getting the source document. So and then you won't have to worry about losing the attachment. So I'll make sure I send the link around so everybody has that handy, that they can forward to anybody that needs it. Okay, so that we're 1 minute before 10, according to my clock. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second,
All right, all in favor?